connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. I'm Judith Limera, delivering to you the latest news in and around the ASEAN region on today's headlines. Filipinos in Baghdad and other parts of Iraq are advised to take the necessary precautions in view of the ongoing unrest in the country, the Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, said Saturday night. Investment and trade agreements valued at $12.6 million were sealed between Philippine and Russian companies during President Rodrigo Duterte's visit to Moscow. And 2 wild elephants rescued from waterfall while 6 others found dead in Thailand. Filipinos in Baghdad and other parts of Iraq are advised to take the necessary precautions in view of the ongoing unrest in the country, the Department of Foreign Affairs said. And I quote, "Filipinos, especially those in Baghdad, are advised to remain indoors and to avoid any movement, especially in areas where demonstrations are taking place," DFA Media and Public Affairs Acting Director Johan Andal said in an advisory. Filipinos are also advised to make sure they have enough food and water and to call the Philippine Embassy in Baghdad if they require assistance, he added. Meanwhile, families of the overseas Filipinos in the Philippines are requested to relay the advisory to their next of kin working in Iraq in view of the interruption in communication services. They are also urged to reach the DFA office of the Undersecretary of Migrant Workers Affairs or the nearest DFA offices should they need assistance. Over the past few days, waves of anti-government protest flooded different parts of Iraq, where thousands of demonstrators are raising arms over issues of corruption, unemployment, and poor of public services. According to reports, dozens of protesters have been killed and hundreds were wounded as security forces responded to the protests. Meanwhile, Iraqi Prime Minister Adel Abdel Mahdi's cabinet issued a series of reforms early Sunday after an extraordinary session overnight in response to sweeping anti-government rallies that have left nearly 100 dead.
هذه مثل المتظاهرين هاي بإجازة استثناء الناس قاعد على الجسر حتى المرة هذا ضبط احنا نسوان ضبط جوانا هاي اللي خدخانه ما نريد مريم ما نريد الساح والله نشيل عليهم وعلى الله نشيل انت حسبت ضبطوها اليوم الشباب كلها اليمن هذا العلم ما يرجع وين المرجع يا مرجع ناس سلمين احنا ناس سلمين والله ناس سلمين فقره الله وكيلك فقره جايين.
In other news, the Philippine National Police is ready to face any inquiry into the issue involving the 2 active generals who, according to the President Rodrigo Duterte, are still playing with illegal drugs. In a statement, PNP spokesperson Brigadier General Bernard Banak said that PNP is ready to face any possible investigation to clarify the report that there are still 2 generals involved in illegal drugs. He said that aside from the Senate investigation, the PNP has not yet received any information about the 2 drugs-linked active generals. During the plenary session of the Valdai Forum in Sochi, Russia, Duterte said at least 2 generals are involved in illegal drug trade.
And right now, even as I fly here and go back, there are about, again, 2 generals who are still playing with drugs. And I said, well, I told you, do not destroy my country because it is being flooded with drugs.
Banak meanwhile said the PNP Chief General Oscar Albayalde still enjoys the trust of the president despite allegations that Albayalde protected ninja cops or police officers who recycle confiscated illegal drugs. He called on the public to support and understand the PNP as he assured them that the organization will remain devoted to its mandate as protector of the people. During last week's Senate inquiry, Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency or PDEA Chief Aaron Aquino confirmed that Albayalde had asked him not to implement the dismissal order against 13 Pampanga policemen involved in an irregular anti-drug operation in 2013. Albayalde, who was Pampanga Provincial Police Chief at the time of the anti-drug raid, was relieved from his post due to command responsibility. Meanwhile, President Duterte has laid out in his speech the Philippine perspectives on other nations' policies in the presence of Russian President Vladimir Putin and other world leaders at the Valdai Forum. As the first ever Filipino chief executive invited to the prestigious gathering, President Duterte pointed out how the international community creates rules for almost everyone, but some refuse to be bound by them. He was blunt about human rights protection being empowered without regard to the actual adverse consequences to people they seek to protect. Take a look.
In its own way, this is the same line for nations. Developing countries like the Philippines with their own histories face different challenges and inner problems that would require different sets of solutions. Yet some call so-called friends act like they know the answers to our problems and impervious to our specific socio-economic and political conditions. They create rules and norms for almost everyone, and some refuse to be bound by the same. Think of the UNCLOS, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and even the Convention of the Rights of the Child. They weaponize human rights, oblivious to its damaging consequences to the very people they seek to protect. Just look at the chaos and instability that ensued in Libya and Iraq following military interventions. Closer home, some of our partners have heard unfair criticism against my government about perceived excesses in our fight against drugs. They see what they want to see to justify the preconceived notions and are trying to understand that what truly is happening is there in my country. Is this how friends treat each other? We have not seen them backtrack from defense contracts over baseless apprehensions that we would use arms to violate human rights. Yet you see the same countries supplying high-end weaponry to parties whose actual human rights records leave so much to be desired.
He clarified that he is not against the United States given its deep ties and shared history with the Filipino people.
Let me be very clear. I am not against the United States and or the West. The U.S. is a close friend of the Philippines. In fact, our only treaty ally. We have deep ties with the American people, forged by shared history and nourished by common values. America certainly can offer so much, more than the world. Let me stress, I am not against liberalism in politics and in the economy. Liberalism, to my mind, creates the best pathways to a just and fair society. For a thriving democracy like the Philippines, there is simply no other better alternative to a philosophy that puts premium on the freedom and dignity of the individual. Our issue is not the current global order, but rather the actions of certain actors that violate the very principles that underpin this order. The Philippines does not ask for a special treatment, nor favors from its partners. It does not seek exemption from the norms and principles that have kept the peace in our world for decades. What we seek, I assume, what the Russian people and all nations also desire, is fairness, equality, and mutual respect. We want a strengthened rules-based order where countries, big or small, are treated the same.
Net25 is now available on OSN, the largest entertainment network in the Middle East and North Africa.
Watch your favorite Net25 shows on OSN channel 725, same day as the Philippines.
Net25 shows live and on demand
Anytime, anywhere,
on any mobile device on OSN Play.
Welcome back. Investment and trade agreements valued at $12.6 million were sealed between Philippine and Russian companies during President Rodrigo Duterte's visit to Moscow. During the Philippines-Russian Business Forum in Moscow on Friday, Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez said that 10 agreements were signed between the Philippines and Russia. In his speech, meanwhile, President Duterte urged Russian businessmen to invest in the Philippines.
Several members of our business community have concluded 10 business agreements with their Russian partners, ranging from business cooperation, agricultural exports, importation, and electric power, with total estimated value of $12.6 million. Our coconut and fisheries industries can look forward to a resurgence as Century Pacific Food inks 3 memoranda of understanding with its Russian partners Magnet Food Retail Chain, Dalimo, and LLC Dalprom Riba, for the exportation of tuna and sardine products to the Russian market. Furthermore, Century Pacific Agriculture Ventures signed a memorandum of understanding with Pan-Asia Impex Company for the sale of coconut milk products to Russia. We thank Agriculture Secretary William Dar for his presence in the signing of these agreements. In the field of medical technology, a memorandum of agreement between Immunitas Holistic Consultants and the Institute of Practical Psychophysics was signed for the promotion, sale, and distribution of Metatron micro-MRI system to the Philippines. In the energy sector, Energy Secretary Al Cusi and Rosatom Overseas signed a memorandum that provides a framework to explore the prospects of cooperation in the construction of nuclear power plants in the Philippines. On the part of the Department of Trade and Industry, we have signed a memorandum of understanding providing for cooperation and information exchange and collaboration on business development aimed at the promotion of trade and investment between Philippines and Russia, members of Russia ASEAN Business Council, and Philippine companies. Finally, the DTI Board of Investments inked a memorandum of intent with the Association of Industrial Parks of Russia to provide a framework of information exchange on investment environment and opportunities to attract and support foreign investments in both the Philippines and Russia.
On the Philippine-Russian economic relations, Russia is a priority trade and investment market for the Philippines. I am pleased to know that our economic exchanges are increasing. Last year, our total trade reached $1.36 billion US dollars. It has more than doubled in 2017 at $568 million US dollars. We are one of the fastest growing economies in Asia and the second fastest in ASEAN. Our economic advantage lies on the strength of our young workforce population. Our macroeconomic fundamentals remain strong. We invite because we feel that investors have shown a strong trust and confidence in my administration with record-breaking investments. We invite our Russian friends to invest and do more business in the Philippines. We offer competitive fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to jumpstart qualified investment projects from infancy to maturity of business operations.
Meanwhile, 3 memoranda of understanding or MOU signed between Philippine tuna producers and their Russian counterparts are at a business forum attended by President Rodrigo Duterte. During his 5-day trip to Russia should pave the way for greater business opportunities for the country's $400 million tuna industry. This according to Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles, who on Sunday said the MOU between Century Pacific Food and Russian partners Magnet Food Retail Chain and LLC Gazprom Riba is part of government efforts to deliver on its commitment to Philippine tuna producers to find new markets like Russia. The President, together with members of the Cabinet, witnessed the signing. And I quote, "The trip of the President was very productive, and this agreement is one of many that will benefit Philippine business interests, especially those that are based in Mindanao," Nograles said. According to Nograles, even before the country's official delegation left for Russia, one of the priorities of the government was to explore business opportunities for the country's growing tuna industry. Nograles said the government expects the whole of Philippine tuna industry, not just Century Pacific Food, to benefit from the trade agreements, as the ultimate objective is to open the door to enter a new and promising market. Today, the Philippines is the top tuna exporting country to Spain, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Collectively, Philippines exports 171,452 metric tons of tuna to these three markets each year, the equivalent of $492 million. Nograles said. He added Russia has the sixth largest economy in the world and a population of 146 million people, so the potential is there. The Philippine tuna industry will profit immensely if the Philippines is able to maximize their entry into the Russian market, and one of the immediate beneficiaries will be Mindanao. In other news, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN ministers and officials celebrated the annual ASEAN Day for Disaster Management with the theme of Bridging Disaster Recovery to Resilience Today in Naypyidaw, Myanmar. Secretary General of ASEAN Dato Lim Jokhoi said ASEAN exerted solidarity through their regional mechanisms, such as the ASEAN Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response, ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance, and ASEAN Emergency Response and Assessment Teams. Yet much remains to be done to strengthen their resilience. ASEAN is among the most disaster-prone region in the world. In 2018, ASEAN particularly faced a difficult year as it recorded over 400 disaster occurrences, namely the earthquakes in Indonesia, flash floods in Lao PDR, dung fire in Myanmar, and typhoon in the Philippines. The ASEAN Day for Disaster Management is celebrated to raise a regional awareness on the importance of building a more resilient ASEAN community. The event was officiated by Vice President of Myanmar, Henry Van Theo, and held in conjunction with the 7th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Disaster Management and the 8th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the ASEAN Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response. Under the leadership of Dato Lim Jokhoi as ASEAN Humanitarian Assistance Coordinator, ASEAN is committed to assist its member states in mitigating and reducing impacts of disasters and bring together aid and expertise from the international community to the region. Meanwhile, two wild elephants near a waterfall are saved by a rescue team after they found themselves trapped on a thin, slippery sliver of rock above the churning waters, trying to save one of the 6 others that fell into the current. The animals have been found dead at the bottom of the gushing and waterfall in Thailand. Watch this. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Judith Liamera, and I'm on with 25.